The sleek, black ink glided across the crisp, white paper, my signature forming the final stroke on the prenuptial agreement. The weight of the pen in my hand felt heavier than it should, like a judge's gavel sealing my fate. Across the polished mahogany table, James, my fiancé of 3 years, sat with a satisfied expression, his fingers drumming rhythmically against the wood. "It's just a formality, Emma," he reassured me, his voice smooth and confident. "You know how it is. Just in case." Just in case. The words echoed in my head, a dull ringing that refused to fade. A safety net for him, a cage for me. A prenuptial agreement wasn't unusual in marriages, especially for high-earning couples like us. But the difference? I had been completely transparent with James. He knew every detail of my finances, my assets, my investments. We had spent the last 7 years together, growing from broke college students to successful professionals. And now, he was preparing for a future without me, whether he admitted it or not. I lifted my eyes to meet his, forcing a smile. "Of course, James. Just a backup plan." His shoulders relaxed, the tension in his posture disappearing as he reached for my hand. "That's why I love you. You're always so understanding." I let him hold my hand, my grip soft but my mind sharp. Because James had no idea, I already knew about his secret. 2 weeks ago, while searching his laptop for an email, a bank notification had popped up. It was an account I'd never seen before, under James' name alone. The balance? $175,000. I shouldn't have clicked on it. I should have respected his privacy. But something inside me, an instinct I should have trusted sooner, pushed me forward. What I found shattered everything I thought I knew about him. The deposits weren't from his regular paycheck. They weren't from any joint investments we had made together. This was money he had been hiding from me. And it wasn't just a passive savings account. It was actively growing. Over the next few days, I dug deeper. I started watching him closely. I noticed the small changes, how he suddenly had more late meetings, how his texts became more guarded, how he had stopped mentioning any future plans involving us beyond the wedding. I wanted to believe there was an innocent explanation. Maybe he was saving for a surprise honeymoon or something extravagant for our wedding. But when I casually asked about our joint finances, his response made my blood run cold. "You handle all the money, babe," he said with a light chuckle. "I don't even check that stuff." Liar. That was the moment I knew. James wasn't just protecting himself, he was preparing for his exit. And now, as I sat across from him, the ink still drying on the prenup he so desperately wanted me to sign, I made a silent vow. If he wanted a backup plan, I would make sure he needed it. That night, as James slept beside me, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions, anger, hurt, betrayal, but I refused to let them consume me. Instead, I focused. If James was planning for his future without me, I had to do the same. I quietly slipped out of bed, grabbing my phone, and tiptoed into the guest room. Step 1. Gather evidence. I logged into our joint banking app, cross-referencing transactions with what I had found in his secret account. Just as I suspected, money had been slowly siphoned out of our shared savings and funneled into his private escape fund. Each withdrawal was just small enough to go unnoticed, spread across months. But together, they formed a damning pattern. I took screenshots, saving them in a secure folder. Step 2. Seek legal counsel. The next morning, I made an appointment with a lawyer, a sharp, ruthless woman named Isabel Grant. When I slid the prenup across her desk, she took one glance at it and smirked. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, flipping through the pages. "Your fiancé thinks he's clever, but he made a rookie mistake." My heart pounded. "What do you mean?" She tapped her pen against the document. "He only listed his public accounts. Legally, all assets acquired during a relationship must be disclosed if he failed to include that secret account of his." She leaned back, satisfied. "Then you're entitled to a portion of it, prenup or not." I exhaled, a slow, calculated breath. James thought he had me trapped. Instead, he had just handed me the key to destroy his entire plan. Over the next few days, I continued my act. I smiled when he walked through the door. I let him kiss me. I pretended to be the clueless fiancé, eager to plan the perfect wedding. All the while, I was silently building my case. Then something unexpected happened. I found another account. This one was linked to a woman's name, Allison Reed. My stomach twisted as I stared at the transaction history. Expensive dinners, luxury hotel stays, gifts from high-end jewelry stores. James wasn't just planning a future without me. He was preparing one with someone else. Everything clicked into place. The secret savings. The sudden distance. The prenup. It was never about protecting himself from divorce. It was about ensuring I walked away with nothing while he moved on with her. I clenched my fists, forcing myself to stay calm. The old Emma would have confronted him immediately, demanded answers. But the new Emma? She smiled, because she knew exactly how to make him regret it. That evening, James came home to a candlelit dinner. "Wow," he said, setting his briefcase down. "What's the occasion?" I poured him a glass of his favorite red wine, giving him a sweet smile. "Just wanted to celebrate us." He beamed, clueless. As we ate, I casually said, "I was thinking, maybe we should start moving some of our savings into a joint account, so we can access it easily for wedding expenses." James froze for just a second. A flicker of hesitation crossed his face, but he quickly recovered. "Oh, babe, that's sweet, but let's just keep things as they are, just in case." There it was again, just in case. I held back my laughter, taking a slow sip of wine. "Oh, James, you have no idea what's coming." Because by the time I was done, his backup plan would be the only thing he had left. And even that, I was going to take it from him. The morning after my discovery, I woke up to the sound of James humming in the kitchen, making coffee as if nothing had changed. I lay in bed for a moment, listening. The man I had spent 7 years with, the one who had promised me forever, was secretly building a life without me. And worse, he was funding it with my trust. I pushed back the covers and got up, forcing my expression into something neutral. The act had to continue. Until my plan was set in motion, I had to make sure he didn't suspect anything. "Morning, love," James greeted as I stepped into the kitchen, handing me a freshly brewed cup. He kissed my temple, the same way he always did. I had to resist the urge to flinch. "Morning," I replied, my voice even. "I was thinking, maybe we should do something special this weekend. Just us. No wedding planning, no stress." James hesitated for a split second before his grin returned. "That sounds great. Maybe a little getaway?" I already knew his answer before he said it. He had plans with her. "I wish, babe," he continued, shaking his head. "But work is crazy. Maybe next weekend?" I nodded, taking a sip of my coffee, knowing damn well that work meant Allison. I smiled sweetly at him. "Next weekend it is." The first move later that afternoon, I sat in my car outside a small, inconspicuous building downtown. The law offices of Isabel Grant. The moment I stepped inside, Isabel was waiting for me, arms crossed, that signature smirk on her face. "Back so soon? I take it you found something?" I pulled out my folder and handed it over. She flipped through the documents, scanning each page with precise efficiency. "Well," she said after a long pause, "this just got a whole lot more interesting." I leaned forward. "Tell me." She pointed to the lease agreement with Allison's name. "If James has been using your shared assets to fund his affair, then guess what? That prenup is worthless." A flicker of satisfaction shot through me. "So I can fight it?" "Oh, not just fight it." Isabel grinned. "Destroy it." Laying the trap. That night, I decided to push James a little further. We were sitting on the couch watching a movie when I casually stretched inside. I was thinking we should start combining more of our accounts before the wedding. James stiffened, just barely. "Why's that?" I shrugged. "Just so everything is easier to manage." I glanced at him from the corner of my eye. "Or are you worried about something?" He chuckled, shaking his head. No, nothing like that. I just think it's best to keep some things separate, just in case." There it was again, just in case. I bit my lip, pretending to think it over. "You're right, of course. Maybe I'm just overthinking." James visibly relaxed, sinking back into the cushions. He had no idea he had just confirmed everything I needed. The second discovery. A few days later, as James showered, I took a deep breath and opened his laptop again. This time, I wasn't looking for bank statements. I needed to see his conversations. It took me less than 5 minutes to find what I was looking for. Emails, messages, reservations at high-end restaurants, plans for a future with Allison. And then, at the very bottom of the screen, a new document. Financial exit plan. I clicked it, my hands shaking. Inside was a detailed plan on how James was going to leave me. Slowly transfer assets into his personal account. Push for a prenup before the wedding. finalize the lease for the new apartment, end things after the wedding, but only once the money was fully transferred. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. He wasn't just leaving me, he was going to marry me, drain what he could, and then walk away. He thought he was being careful, that he had covered his tracks. But he had underestimated me, turning the tables. By the time James got out of the shower, I was sitting at the kitchen counter, flipping through a magazine like nothing had happened. He walked over, kissed the top of my head, and poured himself a drink. "You okay?" I smiled at him. "Yeah, just thinking about how lucky I am." James grinned, completely oblivious. I watched him take a sip of his drink. "Enjoy it, James, because soon, your entire life is going to fall apart." The setup. Over the next week, I made quiet moves. First, I met with our wedding planner. I pretended I was making final arrangements, but in reality, I was adjusting the guest list. Key additions: Isabel Grant, my lawyer, disguised as my family friend, a forensic accountant specializing in financial fraud, Allison's boss. James had been hiding things well, but I was about to drag everything into the light. The final push. The last piece of the puzzle came when James received a text message at midnight. I saw his phone light up as he slept. "Allison, I can't wait any longer. You have to tell her soon." I stared at the message, and then I had an idea. I grabbed my own phone and forwarded it. To Isabel, to Allison's boss, and finally, to James himself, with one simple sentence: "You're right, Allison, he really should." Then I turned off my phone, lay back in bed, and smiled. The game had officially begun. The morning after I sent the message, I woke up to the sound of my phone vibrating furiously on the nightstand. "James?" I let it ring. A minute later, another call came through. "Allison." Then another, unfamiliar number. Likely Allison's boss. I took a deep breath, stretching out in bed, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. The trap had been set. Now, all I had to do was wait for them to step into it. The first cracks appear. I walked into the kitchen, the smell of coffee filling the air. James stood by the counter, his back to me, phone clutched tightly in his hands. His shoulders were stiff, his fingers white-knuckled around the edges of the device. When he heard me enter, he quickly set his phone down and turned, forcing a smile. "Morning, babe." "Morning," I replied smoothly, pouring myself a cup of coffee. "Everything okay?" James hesitated, then laughed, but it was wrong, forced. "Yeah, just work stuff." I nodded, taking a sip. "Must be stressful. You got a lot of calls this morning." He froze, just for a second. Then he recovered. "Yeah, just some early meetings." Liar. I set my mug down and stepped closer, resting a hand on his arm. "I was thinking, maybe we should go out tonight? Have a nice dinner. Just us." James searched my face, likely wondering if I suspected anything. He had no idea. "That sounds great," he said finally, his smile more natural this time. "Let's do it." Perfect. Allison crumbles. First. An hour later, while James was in the shower, I got the first real sign that my plan was working. A message popped up on my phone. "Allison, we need to talk. Please. Call me." I tilted my head, considering. She was panicking. She had no idea why I forwarded that message or what I knew, which meant she was likely to confess something I hadn't even found yet. Instead of calling, I typed back, "Me about what?" Seconds later, my phone rang. I smirked before answering. "Allison," I said, letting my voice drip with curiosity. "What's wrong?" She hesitated, then spoke, her words tumbling out quickly. "Listen, I think James made a mistake. Whatever you saw, it's not what you think." I leaned against the counter, my heartbeat calm, steady. "What do I think, Allison?" Silence, then a shaky exhale. "You know, don't you?" I didn't respond. That was all she needed. "Oh God," she whispered. "He told me he was leaving you after the wedding. He said he just needed to secure everything first, that you two had," she swallowed, "an agreement. An agreement." So that's what James had told her. That I knew, that I was fine with being replaced. I clenched my jaw, keeping my voice steady. "And you believed him?" Another pause. "He told me you two were done, that he just needed time." She was shaking now, I could hear it. The fear, the realization. I let the silence stretch, then finally I spoke. "Allison," I said gently, "tell me the truth. When exactly did James say he was leaving me?" A beat. Then, the week after the wedding, I exhaled slowly. There it was. He was planning to make it look like a natural split, a clean break. Let me enjoy my moment before ripping the rug out from under me. I smiled, even though she couldn't see it. "Thank you for telling me." She inhaled sharply. I hung up. She was done. James gets sloppy. By the time I got home from work, James was waiting for me, sitting on the couch, hands clasped together like a man about to deliver bad news. My stomach flipped. He was going to try and gaslight me. He patted the seat beside him. Hey, babe, can we talk? I dropped my bag and sat, crossing my legs slowly. Of course. He hesitated. I watched his throat bob as he swallowed. Did you send something to Allison today? I tilted my head. What do you mean? He chuckled, but it didn't reach his eyes. She called me freaking out. She said you forwarded some message. I just want to make sure everything's okay. Ah, so that's the game. Make me feel like the one acting crazy, like I had done something irrational. I nodded. Oh yeah, I was just confused about what she meant. Thought maybe she could explain it better. James's smile twitched. He hadn't expected that. Well, he cleared his throat. She misunderstood a lot of things? You know how people get when they don't have all the information. You mean like me? Silence. His jaw tightened. Lori, I reached into my bag and pulled out the printed lease agreement, the hidden bank account statement, and finally, the financial exit plan. I dropped them on the coffee table between us, my expression unreadable. James froze. Every trace of his fake confidence vanished. What is this? His voice was hoarse. I leaned forward. You tell me. The panic begins. James stared at the documents, his breathing uneven. Lori, I crossed my arms. Go on. Lie to me. His mouth opened, then closed. He was trapped. How long? I asked, my voice eerily calm. He swallowed. Lori, it wasn't. How long, James? He exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. A few months, he admitted, but it wasn't like that. It wasn't serious. I let out a slow, humorless laugh. You signed a lease with her. His eyes darted to the papers, panic setting in. I picked up the prenup and held it up between us. And this? You wanted me to sign this while planning to leave me a week after the wedding? He finally snapped. It's just business, Lori. His voice rose. I built my career from nothing, and I have to be smart. It's not about you, it's about protecting myself. I shook my head. You mean protecting yourself from me? Silence. James had always been good at talking his way out of things, but this time, there was nothing left to say. I stood up, grabbing my bag. You were right about one thing, James. He blinked, caught off guard. What? I smiled. It's just business. Then I walked out. I didn't leave James right away. That would have been too easy, too merciful. Instead, I stayed. I let him think he had smoothed things over, that his half-hearted explanations and nervous smiles had worked, that I had believed him. He had spent months, maybe even years, building his escape plan. Now it was my turn. The first move. The next morning, James kissed me on the forehead before heading to work, acting as if nothing had changed. I smiled up at him, playing my part. See you tonight, I said softly. His shoulders relaxed. He thought he had won. But the moment he shut the door, I got to work. I had spent the night replaying everything I had learned, every betrayal, every lie. Now I had a plan, and it started with money. James had been funneling cash into a hidden account, but what he didn't realize was that our joint accounts, they were still open. So, before I did anything else, I transferred exactly half of everything into a new, private account under my name only. Then I changed the passwords. The moment he checked his accounts, he'd realize something was off. But by then, it wouldn't matter, because this was just the beginning, tightening the noose. James had made one critical mistake. He had never considered what would happen if I fought back. He had counted on me being blindly trusting. He had assumed that because he was smarter with money, I wouldn't think to protect myself. That's why I took my next step. I called his employer's HR department. Hi, I said in my best concerned fiancé voice. I just had a quick question about my partner's employment benefits. Do you have records of his company expenses? The woman on the phone hesitated. Are you listed on the account? No, but he told me he had been handling everything. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't anything unusual on our shared financial records. That was all it took. Oh, she said, her tone shifting. Well, I can't disclose details, but I can confirm there was some unusual activity flagged recently. I almost smiled. Bingo. James wasn't just hiding money, he was stealing from his company. That meant if I played this right, I wouldn't just leave him. I'd ruin him. The mistress. There was one more loose end to tie up, Rebecca. James's side project, his new life plan. I had no doubt he had been feeding her lies just like he had done with me, promising her a future, telling her that I was just a placeholder, that soon it would be them. I had debated confronting her, calling her, showing up at her apartment, making her see the truth. But then I realized, why bother? Rebecca wasn't my problem. Instead, I did something better. I sent an email. To Rebecca. Subject, just so you know. Hi Rebecca, I wanted to congratulate you on your new lease with James. I'm sure he's told you everything, but just in case, I thought you should know. The money he's been using to support you? It's from a joint account. Not his, ours. The lease you signed together? He never took my name off our current place. That means, legally, he's still my fiancé. Oh, and the prenup? Funny thing about that, it was a trap. Good luck, sweetheart. You're gonna need it. Best, Lori. The first signs of collapse. That night, James came home later than usual. His tie was loosened, his hair slightly disheveled. He looked exhausted. I sat on the couch, flipping through a magazine, pretending not to notice. Long day? I asked. He exhaled sharply, dropping his briefcase by the door. You have no idea. Oh? Yeah, he muttered. Some financial stuff at work. Just a misunderstanding, and he hesitated, rubbing the back of his neck. I waited. I think Allison might have told Rebecca something. She's been acting weird. Oh, I'm sure she has. I just hummed in response, watching him squirm. James sighed, sitting beside me. I know things have been tense, but I really do love you, Lori. The audacity. I turned to him, meeting his gaze. I love you too, I said softly. Lie. Then I kissed him. Because if James wanted to play this game, I was going to make sure he had no idea I was about to checkmate him. The perfect goodbye. The day before everything came crashing down, James thought we were fine. He was wrong. I made him breakfast. I kissed him goodbye as he left for work. I told him I'd see him later. Then, as soon as he was gone, I grabbed my bags, already packed, and walked out of the apartment. At exactly 3 p.m., James' company froze his work accounts. At 3:15 p.m., his HR department called him in for an urgent meeting regarding financial discrepancies. At 3:30 p.m., Rebecca's lease was canceled. At 3:45 p.m., I froze our joint credit cards. At 4 p.m., James checked his bank accounts and realized that his secret stash had been drained. And by 5 p.m. when he came home, I was gone. The final message. At exactly 7 p.m., my phone buzzed. James, where are you? What did you do? I let him sweat. At 7:10 p.m., another message. Lori, we need to talk. This is insane. At 7:30 p.m., the final one came through. Please, I smirked. Then slowly I typed back. Oh, James. I thought you believed in backup plans? Then I blocked his number. And just like that, I was free. James had no idea. He thought he was ahead, that I was clueless, that Rebecca was waiting for him with open arms, that his backup plan was foolproof. What he didn't realize was that every move he made, I was 3 steps ahead. And today, he was going to learn exactly what that meant. The storm hits. I sat in my car outside our apartment, his apartment now, watching as James rushed inside. His posture was tense, his movements frantic. I didn't need to see his face to know what had happened. His entire world had just imploded. And the best part, he had done it to himself. My phone vibrated. A message from my lawyer. Carver, bank accounts secured, prenup challenge filed, his company is taking action. Consider this the beginning of the end. I smiled. Perfect. James realizes he's screwed. Less than an hour later, my phone rang. I let it ring. James called again. I let it go to voicemail. Another message came through. Lori, we need to talk. Call me. Now. Oh, how the mighty fall. I took my time before responding. Me busy. What's up? Seconds later, my phone lit up again. I answered this time, but I said nothing. Just let him speak first. Lori, he breathed, his voice strained. What the hell did you do? I almost laughed. What did I do? Be more specific, I said, feigning confusion. James let out a frustrated breath. You froze our accounts. I can't access anything. And work. They're investigating me. HR pulled me in today. They're talking about fraud, Lori. Fraud? I didn't do anything wrong. Oh, but you did, James. I'm sure it's all a misunderstanding, I said sweetly. His breath hitched. This isn't funny. I tilted my head. You think I'm laughing? Silence. Then he said the one thing that nearly made me break character. Rebecca left me. Ah, there it was. The nail in the coffin. The moment he realized he had no one left. But I wasn't about to let him turn this into a sob story. Wow, I said, my voice flat. Didn't see that coming. You don't understand, James rushed. She found out about everything. The money, the company, the prenup. She thinks I... He swallowed hard. She thinks I lied to her. I arched a brow. James, I said carefully, you did lie to her. A pause. Then in a broken whisper he asked, why are you doing this to me? For a moment I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But then I remembered the hidden savings account, the messages to Rebecca, the condo lease he signed behind my back. I took a deep breath. I'm not doing anything to you, James, I said softly. You did this to yourself. Then I hung up. A visit to the condo. I wasn't done yet. There was one more thing I needed to do. Rebecca's condo, the one James had been funding with stolen money, was now empty. She had packed up and left, and James hadn't been able to cover rent because, well, I had cut off his access to every last penny. I arrived at the leasing office and walked inside, a folder of documents in hand. The manager, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes, greeted me with a polite but weary look. I'm here about Unit 14B, I said. Recognition flickered across her face. Oh, you're Miss Sinclair? I nodded. She sighed, rubbing her temples. I assume you've heard? I tilted my head. Heard what? She exhaled. The leaseholder, James, he defaulted on the rent. Payments bounced. He's now in violation of the lease agreement. Exactly what I wanted to hear. That's unfortunate, I said, my voice laced with feigned sympathy. But I wanted to discuss something with you. Legally. I slid the folder across the desk. Inside were proof of the fraud, the financial discrepancies, and most importantly, the company's formal complaint against James. She scanned the pages, her brows furrowing deeper with each one. What? What exactly are you asking for? She finally said. I'd like to file an official fraud report against James Harrison, I said calmly. He used company funds to pay for this lease. That means, unfortunately for you, the money he gave you wasn't his to give. Her face paled. And, she asked hesitantly. And, I continued, that means his lease is void. I assume you'd like to avoid being entangled in a fraud case? She swallowed. Absolutely. Then consider the lease terminated, I said simply. She nodded quickly, grabbing a pen. I'll process this immediately. The final goodbye that evening. I packed the last of my things from the apartment. James was still at work, or at least trying to save his job, which gave me the perfect window to leave without any unnecessary drama. I left a single envelope on the kitchen counter. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No note, no explanation, just one document. A copy of his company's official termination letter. By the time he got home, he would realize he had no job, no money, no condo, no Rebecca, and no me. James had planned his great escape, but now he had nothing to escape with. The aftermath. I moved into my own place the next day. A fresh start. No baggage, no deception, no James. For weeks I didn't hear from him. Then one night, I got a text, a single word. James, please. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I deleted it and blocked his number, because James had spent all this time preparing for life without me. Now, I was finally ready to live a life without him. James thought he had lost everything, but what he didn't realize, he still had more to lose. The fallout begins. It had been a week since I walked out of James's life. A week since his entire future collapsed around him. A week since he lost his money, his job, his condo, and Rebecca. And still, he had no idea that his biggest nightmare was just beginning. I was about to make sure of it, a family affair. The first call came from his mother. I wasn't expecting it. Lori, dear, she started, her voice unusually soft. I know things between you and James ended badly. That was an understatement, but he's in a very bad place right now, she continued. He's lost everything, and I let out a humorless laugh. You're calling to ask me to forgive him? A long silence. No, she admitted. I just want to understand. That caught me off guard. She wasn't excusing him. She was trying to figure out how her son had destroyed his life. So I told her the truth. Everything. The secret savings account. The prenup designed to leave me with nothing. The affair with Rebecca. The company money he stole. By the time I finished, she was silent. Then she whispered, My God. And just like that, James lost his last defender. Because if there was one thing I knew about his mother, she despised cowards. And James? That was exactly what he was. A desperate attempt. 2 days later, James finally tried to reach out. Not by text. Not by call. He showed up at my door. I opened it, arms crossed. He looked awful. His hair was a mess, his suit wrinkled, his once pristine confidence completely shattered. Lori, he said, almost breathless. Please, just give me a chance to explain. I leaned against the doorframe. You want to explain why you plan to replace me? He flinched. You want to explain why you stole company money for your mistress? His jaw clenched. You want to explain why you made sure I'd be left with nothing, while you ran off with someone else? His hands shook. That's not. He swallowed. It wasn't like that. I arched a brow. Then what was it like, James? He hesitated. He had no answer. Because he knew I was right. Because he knew there was no excuse. Because he knew I had won. And I wasn't done. Public humiliation. James had spent years carefully crafting his image. The charming businessman. The responsible fiancé. The guy who had it all. But what happens when you take that image away? He had no money. No Rebecca. No job. And now? He had no reputation. Because I made sure everyone knew the truth, not just his friends, not just his family, his entire professional network. I sent an anonymous tip to a well-known business forum, one where his colleagues, potential employers, and investors frequented daily. A thread appeared the next morning, exposing a corporate fraudster, how one man stole thousands from his own company, screenshots, emails, receipts. Within hours, the post exploded. The comments were brutal. Wait, isn't this James Harrison? I know this guy. Didn't he get fired recently? Now we know why. This is career suicide. No one's gonna hire him after this. By lunchtime, James had officially become a walking red flag. And when he called me again, I didn't answer. I just watched as his name popped up on my screen. Then disappeared, and popped up again, and disappeared again. Until finally, it stopped. He knew. He was done. The last goodbye, I thought that would be the end of it. But James wasn't done embarrassing himself. One final email came through that night. Subject, please Lori. Lori, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I hurt you in ways I can never undo. But I just need you to know I wasn't always this person. I was scared. I was selfish. I made the worst mistakes of my life. And now, I have nothing. I just wish I could go back and change everything. If you ever find it in your heart to talk to me, even just once, I'd be grateful. But if not, I understand. James, I stared at the message, and for the first time since this entire thing started, I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not even satisfaction. Just nothing. Because this was never about revenge. It was about making sure James never had the power to hurt me again. And now, he never would. I hovered over the email, then clicked delete, and just like that, James was gone. A new beginning. A month later, I was sitting in a cafe sipping my coffee, watching the city move around me. No baggage, no betrayal, no James. I had my own apartment, my own money, my own life, and it felt damn good. My phone buzzed, a message from a friend. Guess who just moved back in with his parents? I laughed, not because I cared, but because for the first time in 7 years, James was finally facing the consequences of his own actions. And me? I had never been more free. Final thought. People like James think they can plan for every outcome. They think they can manipulate, deceive, and walk away unscathed. But the truth is, you can't prepare for karma. And karma always collects.